Okay, hi there, guys. Now, just let me know if you can hear me loud and clear. I see who's in today. You Melbourneians may be preparing for a long weekend or halfway through a long weekend. All right. And also, if you are new and you're just looking at the stream for the first time, just remember you're probably going to have your settings on YouTube um, a bit warped. You can go down to I could probably just show you if you're seeing this. Just go down to the settings here, left click, quality, click it up to 720, and what that'll do is just give you a better view. Um, all right, g'day Paul, g'day Goldfish. How are you guys? I hope you had a good weekend. We'll get up and running. Welcome. Yeah, an interesting bit of a session. I think it was down about 20 or 30 points at one stage, and I just looked at it a second ago. It was down only a few points. So we'll get into that. We'll have a look at where the markets are, what the US done, what's sort of going to be the driver, potentially the driver in the US, which is obviously going to drag us around a bit going forward. And then we're getting into some trades. We've got having a bit of a look at a couple of shorts. I just want to compare a few and why I like some and why I'm not so keen on some others. Anyway, welcome anyone that's new. Just remember you can follow us on Twitter on the top left hand corner. The top right is Facebook. Bottom right, subscribe to us at YouTube. And you got our general advice warning smack in the middle there. So just spend a minute or so just to read that. Yeah, and just feel free if you are new and you're not understanding how things are working, or you actually in the app and it's the first time you jumped in, just feel free to send us an email if you have any questions down the track to support at tradesetup.com.au. There was just something else I was going to say, but geez, that slipped my mind pretty quick. All right, let's just get into it. I'll probably remember as we go. All right. So, Laurent, how are you, mate? The golden goose. That's right, mate. I am still a tad wary on these markets, and I've never liked chasing those big bounces. I think that it can be aggressive. You just never know. They can get sold off, or sort of the GFC. And I remember back, and I reckon when the GFC was on, you'd be amazed with brokers themselves. Half of them can't trade. It's quite interesting. So I remember fair few of them during the GFC saying, well, to me as well, it's time to buy, time to buy. It's been a big bounce. It's going back up again, jumping. That's just a V-shaped recovery, and then bang, we had a 50% retracement of the move down, and that's when the proverbial hit the fan after that, and it literally caved in. It bounced from I don't know where it was, from 64 down to I think it was 5,000, which is obviously a deep sell-off. Jumped back to about 58, and then we got down to about 3,700 after that. Or actually below 3,000. I can never quite remember the lows. But it's interesting when you get those sort of sharp recoveries. It's all bargain hunting. I mean, you can make some money, but you really have to be on the front foot. You've got to be aggressive with not just your entries, but your exits as well. You can't muck around. I don't think what we're seeing here, this sort of bounce straight back up, is the time to, load the boat at all. So yeah, the golden goose. I think it's having a bit of a nap. The golden gooses hibernate. I'm in that rubbish talking mode at the moment. So we've only got one position, as you can see, FLN. Kicking along all right. It's up to 72. We've got a partial at 74 or 5, sorry. I'm just going to keep an eye on that, so if we can. I really want to take something off on this one. Got really lucky with the way it just took off the same day we sent the alert out. Late on the afternoon, just took off and then really spiked hard. Looks great on a weekly, and it's the weekly chart that it's really supporting that, it's holding up there, because you can see that obviously it's been pressed down from quite highs around 180, 190. I think just a touch above 190. Last year or so, it's been building that base high low. So it's a major price action, or the major structures really, really in place, and that daily just took off through, I think, some key resistance zones. So in essence, actually, what you probably, we'll just touch on it now, what you should be looking at really keep a good eye on your weekly structures in times like now. If they're sort of weekly looks like it's potentially rolling over and you get a daily setup in this sort of market, I wouldn't expect those to go very far. And they could spike up. You could be sitting on good healthy gains and then spike straight back down to stop you out. I mean, you can have your stop in the right place as well, technically in the right spot, and just get stopped out. So you really have to be on your, I guess, on guard in these markets. It's not a bull market at all, and you can see um, XJO. You can see that that is not in an uptrend whatsoever. It's not recovered. It hasn't broken the downtrend. Nothing's changed. We have a bit of a spike. This big pullback. The weekly, the only thing keeping it, I really don't like how this market has, well, how our market has popped through that low at 57.24, 25, this previous low. That's the anchor to the uptrend. How it just cleaned out that zone down to close, 56, actually by about 100 points, washed out that zone. To me, that's not you know, I don't expect to see any strength anytime soon. So that's what I'm very wary. If it touched on that support zone, it's a sort of a different story. You got the double bottom, it's still holding trend, it's still holding the anchors. Up we go. But instead, it's washed it out and it's sort of just bounced back. But the daily, the anchor's still around that 59.50. So be very wary. And you can see its price action the last few days, not looking great at all. Now, US on Friday night, they were down. And they're getting mixed signals, and I have a bit of a chuckle at this. You've got Trump coming out and saying expecting a good deal with China. He's talking it up, he's in all the news services, headlines, da da da. And then what's his name, Kudlow, in his staff. Now just find his name. Basically, at the same time, comes out and says, "Is it him?" No, I'm just going to get up my alert. Sorry, just one, guys. Now, he's coming out and saying something opposite, saying, "No, I don't expect anything. Where we haven't gotten the deal soon, it's probably a little bit less likely than it has been before." So it's these conflicting views or news that's popping out. Trump saying one thing and then his actually advisors saying something else into the service. So people are just getting confused. And if that's the case, it makes sense that Trump's coming out spruiking it a bit because he's coming up to the midterm elections. So I'm just assuming he's trying to garner a bit of support. And you know what he's like. He's really quick to jump on any sort of news and just he'll say whatever. It doesn't really bother him. Fact or fiction doesn't really bother him by the looks of things. So whether there is some sort of deal in place and he's the only one that knows and his advisors don't know, then that's one thing. But I doubt that's the case. So it seems that more like he's just talking it up a bit to take the pressure off the fact that a deal hasn't been done with China in regards to tariffs and trade and things like that. Well, same thing, but regards to trade, and I think the pressure's on him in a bit. But talking it up prior to the midterm elections is probably going to give him a bit of support that he's doing the right thing. Da, da, da. But we'll see. We'll see. So it has kept the fact that people are still cautious up here, and you can see that they ended down, and the fact that their employment data came out stronger than expected, meaning that payrolls were higher, number of new job creation was higher in the US for last month. Not interest rates. The unemployment rate stays very low. Um, so the pressure's still on the upside in the labour market, which means that they're still doing well, the economy's still doing well, which means that their interest rate outlook is not going to change, um, which means the cost of debt, corporate debt, is gonna edge up. There's not so I think what they're really in hope that the tariffs and the problems that it's causing on tariffs is going to slow labour market a bit. It's going to is not going to naturally potentially cool the economy. So they don't have to raise rates. So they maybe cut back on one or two rate rises or hold off on one or two rate rises in the US, but it doesn't look like that at all. The numbers are coming out are still really good. So I think the focus is back on rate rises and what's that's going to do to borrowing costs, what's that's going to do to corporate earnings going forward, and what does that mean to current pricing? Are they a bit overextended? Have we seen the peak in earnings? Which means we've seen the peak in price, which means there's going to be a further sell-off in the US, which means it's going to drag us lower. So all these sorts of things, the market's still tentative up here in the US. On top of that, you've still got Brexit. They haven't come to a deal. Maybe they have, maybe they haven't, um, or maybe they have behind the scenes. But there's still that concern that's dragging on. You've got an emerging currency market. The higher the US goes, emerging markets coming under pressure. Obviously, paying their debt in US dollars, which is going to be, the interest charges are going up. So yeah, there's still quite a few issues, I think, for our market to be really looking potentially bullish where we are. DAX, oh, not actually DAX, what am I talking about? Dow, that's your Dow there. That's the last couple of days. Had a good pullback, we know that. But whether or not, I don't like the way it's just banged straight back up, still holding the trend down on the daily anyway, is anchored at this level at, was it 25,800, 820? This little green candle, you can see pretty much 25,820. It's still held down. It's still holding that trend down. We've had that big recovery, obviously from down around 24,100. So what's that? My math's about 1,400 points in the Dow, 1,400 to 1,500 points in the Dow. Good recovery. Doesn't mean I really do want to see it, and I think there'll be a lot of other people that want to see this level hold up, and not just. I don't think it's just going to go straight up from here. We have to have some sort of pullback. It's whether we do that sort of bang straight back down, and then buyers start stepping earlier. So there's still. So what you're trying to assess really is whether or not there's selling pressure about to come in or buying pressure about to come in. And I think just by purely looking at the technicals, we've had this actually, make that a bit smaller. So we've had this sort of sell off. That's about where we are, and we've just recovered. And it's the same for our market. So what I'm sitting here trying to do is just assess what are we going to see. I'd prefer to be bullish. I prefer to see this straight back down again. I don't want to see any mucking around. I don't want to see any lower highs here, any chop. I want to see it straight back down because that's selling pressure. Okay, that sellers are still getting a bit edgy up here. Anyone that's missed out on selling here, and we're there. Looks like we just dropped off and we're back on. Sorry, guys. So just let me know if you can hear me. I know it'll probably take a few moments till you'll probably get kicked off and back on again. We should be good to go. So what I'm looking for on basically these markets, the US as well as the ASX, all sorts of markets look fairly similar. I want to see this press down. I want to see sellers take control, but I want to see the way I interpret this. Okay, there's more sellers that come in, but there's some buyers that are ready to sit on the sideline. They're not buying it up here. They're not chasing it. They're going to wait for that pullback, and they can see if we do get that pullback straight down and then start to find some inside high lows. I think that's bullish. Now, if we see something like, if you can just imagine it straight across here, if we see something like this and it starts chopping around up here, I'm not going to be too bullish here. I think what that is that, that chop, there's that argy-bargy, and I would expect from there, if we get these inside lower highs, I'd expect there's going to be a lot more selling to come in and really to press it down. And this type of price action will probably keep anyone that's wanting to buy, keep them on the sidelines for a little bit longer to see what happens down at the support. Potentially what we did on the ASX up here. You've spot down, pop back up. We got that lower high, and then we basically just went straight down and through 61. I think for me, I'm looking at this support zone at the very least. So then I'll be looking at, from there, if we do that, are we going to have a much deeper correction on the weekly? We're going to build those sort of two moves we always talk about. We're going to go, say we go down, little inside low, and we go a deeper correction. So that's your first move. You bounce back up, pull back, build a high low, and then a deeper correction from the daily or weekly, which is going to take us through the anchor level at 59.50. But I still really have to see to get fully bullish on the market and load the boat. I want to see this level tested and what happens down here. Am I not the only one that's really willing and waiting, got cash in the bank, waiting to jump back in to start adding to positions or building a portfolio back up with some quality setups? So that's what I've got in mind. And for me, it's the Dow is in that sort of position. Where's the S&P? The S&P, same, if had one strong move down, bounce, another strong move down. So this sort of price action, you think the mental toll on people that have been long and getting squeezed out and had to get stopped out of positions, or if they don't take stops in their portfolio, they're just sitting there riding on losses. Imagine the mental toll that it's taking with this market down here, and if it starts to chop. So I think there's a lot of pressure to be put on these people, and it's just whether or not above 26, say on the S&P, that buyers are going to step up to the plate and start to look to support that zone. Look, that weekly still looks good. It's not in a bad zone. It could find support down here, and from there, it's It's what happens from there. Do we go back up and test highs, build a major lower high, or how's it going to play out, and what opportunities are we going to get? All right, so I'm not seeing. Oh, look good. And I think the FTSE, obviously the FTSE and the DAX, they've got their own sort of little issues. I wouldn't, I don't really look at those too much. I just like to see what they're doing. It's mainly the US, what's happened in the US, because they're sort of the main driver for us in the way US dollar, commodity prices, things like that. So yeah, we've had a good chat about the XJO. What's everyone else's thoughts? I know there's been probably a few good little ones that have popped up here. Let's just see what's Nasdaq. Very similar on the Nasdaq, Hang Seng. What do we got in the Hang Seng? Yeah, that weekly, it's come right down, but in context of what's going, their broader context is not too bad. Maybe it's in a prime position on this in your monthly. It's come back down to EMAs, could bounce off there longer term. We're going to see really most markets after that big washout is a lot of price action that I want to see um, before it builds my confidence again to start jumping back in the market. All right, any questions there, guys? I thought what we'd take, might as well take the opportunity to look at shorts, if that's the case. Let's go back to the ASX. So what I'm seeing just in the daily, the weekly, so they're sort of conflicting. So what I'm looking at, stochastics are quite down, quite low on the weekly. So I'm gearing up, or I'm leaning towards this scenario where we pull back, build a higher low, potentially have a deeper correction, and then just assess it as we go. But I'm looking for that pullback. If we can get some inside higher lows like this, what's in the semicircle or whatever you call it, that shape there, we get these inside higher lows, then okay, it's worth going to those quality setups that you've been looking at, you've been waiting for, seeing what they play out, or see how they play out, and then potentially just looking for some good little buy-in opportunities because the weekly looks like set for a bounce. Just how far it could potentially go. The daily looks like it could be rolling over. Don't like this price action. Don't like the rejection. Just dribble that in a bit on this candle. What was that? 1st November? Was it Thursday? Thursday. That rejection from the highs. Okay, obviously Friday it's pushed lower and it's rejected it into the close. But if you go and look at intraday, the intraday is not. It was down most of Friday. Actually, I think it's opened down, bounced, and just chopped around below zero, and then into the close popped up. So that's not, that's not something I'm going to take on board for too much strength anyway. And that action today, so far we're down one at the moment. It is rejecting it, but if we don't really kick on with any more strength from here, I'm inclined to think this is going to be a lower high, and we're going to at least push down towards that 56.50 zone. And then I just want to see what happens if there is going to be those buyers step up to the plate early, jump in at higher levels, and see what they do. Let them support it, and then we're looking for those setups. So on the short side, I'm not worried about taking a short. We did have Wesfarmers we got out of that at sort of 45.60, closed out. Friday wasn't looking too good, but today it's bounced quite hard today. So yeah, had a good bounce at 1.8, 1.1%, 1.2%. So that was looking to get extended. Um, so that was one good short. The other shorts that we just looked at, I'll go over here. All right, I just want to show you. So this is one thing I'm potentially looking at. This is the longer term on Transurban. Yeah, it's going to be interesting on the midterm elections. And how the market takes them. Um, I think it's going to bring in some volatility, but how it affects us is going to be a different story, isn't it? We just have to really wait and see. I don't like to try to guess. I don't want to go. And I think this is where I always talk about just sitting on the fence. Um, and this is a thing when you're when you were a broker, people always say, "Oh, you have to know. You want to buy or want to sell? Are you going to be bullish or bearish?" So I don't think that's the right. I don't believe that that's the right way to be. Okay, you think it's going to go up. This is the scenarios I plan out for, what I want to see if I'm bullish and what I want to see if I think the market's bearish. And whatever plays out, you just trade it. But I don't want to be sitting there trying to believe what would happen. You know, uh, how am I trying to explain? Especially with the midterms, I'm not really worried now what I think. Because I don't want to be biased either way. If I think, oh, if it does this, it's going to be bullish. That should be good. That's what I think is going to happen. Because then unless of course you've got both sides, you're trying to plan ahead. What do I expect? What could happen if it's I don't know if whatever the elections come out at, whatever the result is, what would happen to the market on the upside, and what do I expect to see? Okay, then trade that and have the same sort of plan planned out for the downside. But I think you should always be sitting there, not really being bullish for the market or bearish for the market. Like what I was just discussing on the ASX, I've got these two plans, what I want to see, and how if I see scenario A, I think I'm going to be bullish on that scenario. I think this is what I expect to see. If it doesn't play out and I'm wrong, I have to reassess it as I go. But I don't want to get this preconceived idea in my head of what I think is going to happen, um, because then if it doesn't, it could completely throw you off the mark. Or when the market's going down, you're and I've done it many times before trading, so especially intraday, you just get stuck in your head that it's going to bounce, and it doesn't bounce. It just keeps going down. Or I've sold it. I've just kept selling into a rally at one stage because I just had this idea in my head and I just could not get it out that it's stretched. It's gone too hard. So I sold it, got stopped out. Okay, you get this little pullback, pops back up. Okay, do it again. I'm just trying to pick levels because I had this bias in my head. So I'm really what I try to do now is like what I want to see. I'm just trading with the trend. If I see something change, stand back and just assess it as we go, then jump in short or whatever you're going to do. But let the market tell you what it's doing. And that a lot of the times that could mean missing something, um, which sometimes it just keeps you out of trouble. But at the same term, it could when you see it, then you trade it. But if you don't see it, you just don't trade it. I hope people know. I hope it makes sense what I'm getting through to, what I'm trying to discuss. Anyway, let's go have a look at this. This is Transurban. Now, I think this is a major level. You had this little double top up here, big pullback. Now, this big move up here, if the market was really strong, okay, it's just pierced it. That's great. That's not too bad. It came off a low base. I'd rather see in a scenario like this, if it's going to be a strong, and that was a good correction, we've washed out a lot of these late buys. Anyone that's potentially from above $9 or 9.25, these late buys in here, clean them out potentially. But this is more just a V shape, bang, bang, straight back up again. I never trust that type of price action. Okay, I would rather see when it pulls back, I'd rather see a good bounce and then a bit of a squeeze in on price. And then you can see that if the sellers have come in like they have just here, they're getting soaked up and then looking for your buy entry. And I think if it can build a nice little base like that, as opposed to just pretty much going straight up, I would assess that as being able to go straight through resistance and just continuing on through and having another major leg up like this. But instead, it sort of bounced through, and you can see it failed pretty quickly over. I'm on a couple of weeks, bang, straight back down, back to the MAs. Had another go, didn't, and only really washed out the highs just below 13. And now we're starting to see these higher lows getting taken out. Higher low here was taken out with this move back. We pushed up, market got extended into that overbought. We fell short of the previous highs around 13, and now we're heading lower. So we've got a key level right down here at around 950. But I still see this could easily, I mean, just from here, you look at the stochastic, could just bounce, come back up to oversold. Sellers really start to pile in. So what I'm trying to assess here, and don't forget, we always look for that reversion to the mean type of thing. So you've got a move down, reversion to the mean back to the MAs, and the MAs here you can see are starting to spread apart, which is if they're starting to spread apart on the downside, that's where you'd be a bit nervous if you are long, nervous that this big long-term move could really start to pick up some steam and really start to roll over a lot faster, pick up steam on the downside, not on the upside. So I'm looking for this, and that's all because of the price action that's been built. So you've got a good move up, potentially come to an end. You're a bit concerned here. Selling's come straight back in. Okay, they got soaked up here, bang, straight back up. If that was a strong market, should have gone through those highs. It's not. Okay, it's pulled back. It's washed out the lows. Okay, maybe it's just washing out the lows. Strong market should go back up. Really should go back up a third time, straight up through the highs at 13. Instead, we fell short. That's not a sign at all of a strong market. So you got this lower high, longer term on the weekly, starting to pressure in. This could be just the start of a move. We've got a move back to the MAs on the weekly. So if we flick it over to the daily, whoop, and I'll just make that better. You can see the daily well and truly extended on the upside, and we're nowhere near the previous highs back at 12 or even right up at 12.30 or so on. So this move is starting to roll over. We've had some buying reacted up off 1060. Didn't really get too far at all. They've only gone from 1060 to 1140, those highs. So really what we're looking for is this going to roll over and continue that or pick up steam on the downside. We've got our targets potentially on the downside. We could easily move to 950. There's no real lows in the place apart from this one, which is down here at 1060. Now, if we roll over, we trade down here, we start reacting back up off that level, or we start getting some inside high lows, we might just close it out, if we do get set on the downside. But if not, it could pierce straight through 1060 and roll over, and roll over all the way down to 940 or so. What we're saying, all because of this longer term price action. You've got this double top washout. Never like to see washouts and then a big pullback and start attacking the higher low. And then you start to grind back up and you've got a major lower high here. So maybe that's your first leg down, your secondary leg down. It takes you somewhere around 1040, thereabouts. But I think that for me is really just building up the price action for potentially a longer term move lower. Now, if we just quickly show you what's got me on the weekly anyway. If you just draw basically a support line across here, I think it was across there. It's really just broken down with this pop through here. You could probably draw a clearer one there as well. So you can see what I'm saying. It's come back down. Okay, we've come back down, touched it again. Draw your support zone. Now we're broken through. So it's starting to make sense why you wouldn't want to hold this share, especially if we do get the overall markets capitulating a bit more. Now I know. Let's go to Qantas. Someone whacked this up in the chart. Lauren whacked it up in the chart. I was just asking about a short on that. I don't view this to be a short, to be honest. Wouldn't buy it. Don't get me wrong, but the price action is potentially there. It's building. Now, what you've got on Qantas, just starting with a weekly chart, I think it's different price action. I think it's got some work to do. We're not in a zone where sellers could pile in, and we haven't really seen the longer term price action play out. You've got a move up, pull back, move up. Okay, pull back there. We've got this move up. If you're long here, this could be at the early stages of what we just spoke about. Very similar, but maybe it's got the early stage. It could grind higher. But what I'd be looking for here is a major on the weekly, lower high, below that 650 to 675 zone. Does that make sense? I think this price action still, even there, you're still not really, okay, that if you take it from low to low, we could chop around here. We could chop around here, go sideways for a while, and then start to lift and take off up through 675. But the only thing's got me wary about this, if I was going to be long, or if I was long, is the fact that this pullback up through the highs, but really not significantly. Probably, what's that, 20 cents or so? Push up through the highs. Now, if that was a strong market, we should have done this. See how this has approached the highs a bit differently. It's gone up, had a decent little pullback, and kept building. So that's dragging in a lot more buyers than this sort of move straight up. So when you get this type of bang, bang, so that V shape, I'm concerned about that when it pops through the highs. If you're looking to buy on a break of that high, I'd be stepping clear of that. I'd rather see it pull back, after it pops through the highs. I'd rather see it pull back like this in that two-legged move and then start to show some good signs and then buy it so you can minimize your risk. You know that this is going to drag in a lot more buyers than just, a pullback and sitting on the bid somewhere. You might think it's okay. This is undervalued. It hits $6. It's traded on $6. I'll get in that green candle and bang, it's now down at 525, and you're sitting there going, well, what happened? Does that make sense there, guys? Just what I'm trying to say. This is different price action just here from mid to end of 2016, even the start of 2017. And we had it, and you can see that by the way it just kicked off. It didn't look back when it got through this level. Basically, it straight up into the level. The next week, straight up again, straight through. Didn't look back. Now that is clear strength, as opposed to popping up, having a pullback, popping up, get a couple of red candles. That's not strength at all. So that, to me, it could be the start longer term of Qantas finding some pressure. But the daily, if you flick it over to the daily, I would really It's not really in that zone. And the daily, I'll show you what I'm talking about. It's showing something slightly different. It's just got to do with this, well, this last price action. When you see the market press down, it's quite constant. And then you got quite a few green candles, and it lifted price from 530 up to about 575. Now, a couple of good green candles. That's lifted price. It's lifted quite well. Okay, the next stage is that it's come down, taken out the lows, bang, straight back up again. Now, this is bullish. It's not bearish at all. And couple that with what's happening on I think we're extended to the downside on the weekly. Yep, we're extended to the downside on the weekly. So if we extend it down here, and this to me is looking more bullish, I wouldn't want to be shorting this just yet. And the way it's only because after we've had this leg down, a couple of good green candles, and it really before that, okay, we pieced together, or the price action pieced together a couple of good green candles here, but they didn't get very far. They didn't move up that far, whereas this is a bit different. This moved up quite good. Did react lower, take out the lows, but then it's bang, straight back into it again and did rally straight back up again. And we're sort of, and if that was a weak market, it shouldn't have. It maybe should have hovered around the 530 to 40 and then rolled over again. Okay, so that's to me just the most, say, probably the last month. It's shown a few signs of strength, probably because it's overextended on the daily and into the weekly as well. So I would be ideally looking to work this if we can get a bit of a push up, pop 610, 620, I don't know, and then it starts to build a lower high. If we can start to hold a lower high and it gets a bit extended on the weekly as well, then yeah, I think it's a different story altogether. So you can just see, just comparing the two charts, what the differences are. Look, if you still have questions, just give us a yell, send us an email to the support line, support@tradesetup.com.au. There you go, mastered that. There's a couple of West Farmers we've gone over. TLS is another one. If you look at the weekly, this is the weekly. I know the problem I have with this, even though it doesn't look strong at all, is that it's come off those highs. You know, it's 675. It's been going down for years. Started 2015, so 15, 16, 17, most of 18, it's still heading down, and nothing has broken that trend. That trend is well and truly well established down. The weekly with this little pop up, it's pulled back. It's looking like we call a tap pattern, and the tap pattern is, if Dav was here, he talks about this a lot. I'll just draw it up. I'll get rid of that. The tap pattern is when, go away, we get this, the market's moved up, had a pullback, and it starts to find this type of thing, and it starts to look to roll over. I'll probably draw this better if I can draw it freehand. Like this, it starts to look like it's going to roll over like that. When it rolls over and you can't get up near the previous highs up here, it's just finding weakness at a lower level, then that'll start to pick up steam on the downside. And then you expect these to really start to just capitulate. So that's what, it's probably clear on the daily what this is looking like on Telstra. So that's around that $3 mark, just below $3. It looking like if it breaks that $3, was it lows? 298. This thing could just start to really test down towards 260. So if I was going to short that, my plan of attack would be, okay, you're shorting that, you don't have to worry too much about, you've got about 15-cent risk, just around 315, sorry. You can put your risk there, it breaks down. Now, because of the way it's so extended on the weekly, it could fall short, build a high low. Either way, you've just got to be on guard. One, you're looking for that high low on the longer term charts, and it starts to find some buying support on the daily, then just get out, take your short, take your money and run. Or if it really starts capitulating and it comes in hard to that zone without really much of a pullback, then be a chance it's just going to break straight through 260 and take out, further lows. And there's not much. I mean, it is down, and still could potentially get down to 250 and below. So yeah, so that's just a couple of shorts I thought I'd throw at you. All right, easy to get sidetracked with me. Any questions there? We've got a couple that so on the short side, BAL. Let's have a look at those. Bellamy's on the short side. I'd be picking something else that got a bit more fat in it there, Laurent. If it was up here, so Bellamy's, if you're looking at it around here, that's probably got a lot more fat in it on the downside than to short it somewhere around here. If I've got the right stock, BAL, yeah. Whereas Qantas it's got a bit of fat in it. I just think it needs to build that lower high. So I mean, you can see it's been rallying up for quite a while. So I reckon that one probably should be on the list for a little while. Bellamy's, yeah, well, we'll see. Could be wrong. Northern Star, again, weekly on the Northern Star is strong. It's not. There's no sign whatsoever of weakness at the moment. Maybe on the daily, not really either. You've got to get your lower high. Really, if you're going to be aggressive on the shorts, you want to come off a lower high. You don't want to see it just shorting it on a breakthrough, say from here. Say you've got your support, your line in the sand at 825. I wouldn't short that if it just come down from here at 825. I would view that as just going to be a washout, and it's going to trap some sellers and turn around and squeeze them back out. It's a lot different price action if it can get through there, pop back up and build a lower high, and then you're working off the lower high, because that means that it's broken a key level. It's a heads up there's going to be some weakness. Whether it continues on, if it does, so be it. You don't have to get short just because something's overextended on a weekly. But working off a lower high after it's broken maybe a little minor level or something, and a lower high comes in play, that's just people wanting to get out. Someone is selling it and not waiting to get to 950. They're waiting like $9. It starts running out of steam. Get out, get out, get out. If that makes sense. So that's sort of the attitude when you get a lower high. But you've got to put it in the context. Yeah, everything is in context. Like we just had TCL. I was showing you that weekly chart. Now the weekly, look at that, it's, big, and we'd explained all that, and it's starting to get that like the tap pattern we just explained. It's starting to, you can just see it rolling over. It's getting weakness, and you've got the lower highs in play. Lower highs mean someone wants to get out. You don't know how many. NXT. All right. Does that make sense? NXT. Let's make a look at that. So this is a different story. The problem is shorting it here. The weekly, this could be a zone, and look at the weekly. I mean, the weekly has gone up. This is corrective price action, definitely corrective. Whether or not this is going to be a support zone, it hasn't played out just yet. It hasn't shown too much strength, and you can see this low on this green candle just took out the previous low, 578. Let's just drill in on that. You can see that. So that low there is at 578. What do we get down to? 567. So it's taken out that low and popped back up. That's not a clear sign of weakness. And you put it in context, it's been going up. Okay, we're trying to assess whether this is just a pullback and we're going to keep going back up, start building a longer term higher low, and off we go through 8, or whether it's serious weakness. Now, I think if you're going to sell it, I'd be looking just to hold off on just by purely looking at that weekly. On the daily, yeah, to me, it's had one. So you just got to look at this and go, is this the known or the unknown? This is well and truly, people know it's coming down. It has been since the start of mid-June. It's nothing new. It had a big sell-off here. About here, if you went to buy it through here and it just went sideways, that's more of the unknown. And then you get this secondary leg. Okay, bang. Now we know that the market's it's in a negative bias. It's pushed down. It popped down to $6, and then it's still, you're holding lower highs. So potentially this is it's not in the unknown anymore. And we always want to trade, especially on the short side. You would want to be in the unknown, where you've got the price action, everything's, you're adding it together. You're seeing your signs of weakness, and then you want to get in. You just want to take that opportunity to jump in. It breaks a certain level, and then if you're right, if everything that you've stacked up together, you're right, that should accelerate. Now, if it doesn't, you've got an opportunity to potentially get out, cut your losses, or just take a small gain. But when you're right, you know it pretty quickly. Whereas, and that's when you get, so what you're doing is you're selling it, preempting that sort of, that sellers to jump in. And it's the same on the buy side. You're trying to preempt the buyers when it's going from the unknown to the known. And when I say the known, it's when it starts to break key levels, and then you've got people either selling on a break or, sell on stop or buy on stop. When people just want that more and more confirmation, the more confirmation they need, the lower likelihood that trade is going to work out in their favor, because it means more and more people know about it. And so it's using up the fuel that's on the sidelines to jump into the market. I hope that makes sense. Anyway, yeah, so even off this NXT, I'd probably be more inclined, especially the way this little pop down, the way it's rejected that, I'd be more inclined just to hold off on a bit on the short side anyway, and sort of base my short off the weekly, because really this weekly is still in an uptrend. Great, Lauren, it's awesome how you you just keep jumping in, mate, and you're having a look at them. Can't go wrong by trying, can you? And who's to say I'm right anyway? Well, I think I'm a legend, but not always right. All right, what's next? So we've got shorts AAD. I don't know if you want it short or long, but personally, I wouldn't be shorting or buying just yet. More inclined to be looking at this as a buying opportunity. Well, nothing yet. It's down on its knees down here, and you can see it's down support level. It's found a level potentially at what that is, 150. Um, so to sell it, wouldn't go near it just yet. And again, that's not in the unknown at all. It's pretty much the known. So when it becomes the known and you're on the short side, just be careful that you're not going to jump into a washout and get caught. I think there's better opportunities on the short side than like this. To go long, same scenario. It's down on its knees there, but there's nothing at all off the weekly chart to say that it's starting to pick up some steam. And on the daily, definitely not. That's a downtrend there. So anyway, that's the way I attack it. What have we got there? Yeah, okay, the KDR. Now KDR is more on the rise, and I don't mind seeing things like this. Assessing it with what you got to do on the weekly. Don't like the fact that it's got hammered here, but that's potentially the heat that needed to come out of the market for it to, to drag in some more buyers. I don't know at all what the fundamentals are. It could be some good news that's really driven this little spike up here. On the weekly, it's probably too early to start jumping in. You just got to assess what are these good levels. Now, that's probably the first one that pops up. I don't put a lot of stock into that because I don't think that's, you just don't. I know there's a technical thing. Okay, this comes down to this is the point of a breakout point. It was way back last year, but it's off the weekly chart. Broke out here. Okay, we'll come back down, test the breakout point, and pop back up. I wouldn't buy just because it's at that level. Um, I'd rather see. I'm always looking to work off a high low because if I'm going to buy, and I'd like to see the high low on the weekly. Um, I think on the weekly it's popped up here. You've broken through. Let me just go down. It's broken through that anchor level. If I can draw that a bit clearer, and you'll see it on the daily. It's broken through that anchor. So the market's moved down. This is the only green candle. You had really some serious weakness. Bang, straight back down. Okay, you had a good pop up. Got a couple of green candles there. You've got a clear sort of a level. It took out that low, but didn't get too much further than about, say, 95. Well, 90. It got down to and then it touched on that sort of that breakout zone at 85. So to me, you couple those together, that's more of a bit of a wash out of the lows. And then what we've seen is a good solid run up, took out that anchor. So really all I'm looking for now, if I'm going to jump into that, is a move like that, a pullback, build a high low, could be 110, could be 120, wherever. But I want to see this sort of price action and then start to lift. I know where my entry is and away you go. I think that's on the rise though, potentially. I just think because the MA is across, I think it's got a lot of work to do. It's in a good zone. Down here, it's down, and longer term, if this is just sort of your trend up, everything starts to play into playing together. I don't like off the weekly, this sort of straight down. One, your first reaction to buy it. I don't like buying off the first reaction. I want to see a bit more work done. I want to see more evidence that there's going to be buyers in there because who's to say this doesn't break right down, completely, drop like a stone to 40, and then you're sitting there on your hands for the next year or so. So that's what I'm looking for on the weekly. The daily, you can see that zone through around 130, it's broken. Rather see a pullback. If we can get a pullback and buy a higher low, we can get into, then there could be a deeper. We don't know how far it's going to go off that weekly chart. Don't forget on the way up. Let me just get back. We don't know how strong that move is going to be up, but I would like to see it pull back at least on the daily, and then I know where I'm going to put my risk. Pulls back, builds a high low, then I can potentially jump in, know where my risk is. If I'm wrong, I'm not going to take too much risk on board. But if I'm right, and this thing has a deep correction on that weekly, or it is the start of a new leg up, we could be heading up to 230, and then you've got a good trade on your hands. Yeah, I think this is very, well, not so much early stages, but if you've bought this, good. If you haven't, just be wary that you're not going to get caught on a pullback. Like I always say, I'm always happy to give up a trade. I'm always looking from the risk side of I don't want to I don't want to focus on what I'm going to miss out on. I want to always focus on what I'm potentially going to lose on the trade. If it's too much for me to risk and if it's not set up, I'll always leave it. And if I'm wrong and it keeps going, good on me. But that doesn't matter. You just have to do a bit more work to find something that's set up. Where are we? CPV. Megio, how are you, mate? So this one, it's got a reason to find some buying here. It's a very small one, Clearview. Why have I got my eye on this one? I don't know if I've seen this one. I have alerted this one a while ago. Let me just check. Maybe I haven't. No, I haven't. I might be thinking of another stock. Anyway, I mean, there's not, to me, just off that daily chart, I wouldn't be buying it just yet. For me, it has to lift up through 40 cents. If it goes up through 40 and it can start, you can see it start to edge up, edge high. The previous day's highs are taken out and it has a bit of a pullback. If that's below 40 and it pops up through 40, then I'll be looking for just basically a pullback potentially to buy into. I don't think just because it's down near 30 cents, it's touched on 30, doesn't mean that the selling's over. It's a relatively new stock too. This could be the run up. And if anyone that's been holding it from the open has seen this and missed getting out here, it's come all the way back down to 30. If it starts breaking through 30, they might be sitting on a 20%, was it 20 cent IPO, sorry. They've got 10-cent gain. They're just not willing to risk it, especially to see they've missed out on potentially this run up. Could be some bad news. I don't know what they're doing. But I'm starting to see the way it's reacted quite low, and you can see the steepness of this move down, pretty much near vertical, as opposed to this move down. This is a bit more controlled, which means that potentially this buy is starting to edge in as we get down to that 30 zone, which may mean that the 30 is going to be the line in the sand, but it hasn't been proven just yet. So I'll be keeping my eye on this one. You usually come up with some crackers. Wow, it's good. Uh, I was looking at this, or I am looking at this. It's just a daily. I don't like buying something when they're extended on the daily and it's just broken through. It's had the first push up through a clear resistance zone at around 28.50. So if I can get a pullback, and I wouldn't suggest that's the pullback. It had one day up, one day back down. It got rejected at 28.25. I wouldn't buy it through there. But that weekly, it's definitely a zone. Look, it's a good zone in both the week. That's a cracking zone on the weekly, actually. That's a continuation zone, pretty much touch back down to the MAs, even though it's below it. The MAs haven't crossed. It's starting to lift on the weekly and dropping it down to the daily. The daily just suggesting to me we could get a pullback to buy into. Um, Whether it's something like this, just a pullback, get a couple of good days, and then if it starts to lift again, yeah, it could be one definitely the worst to jump straight back into. Because of that, you're going to have the weekly charts or the weekly longer term buys. It's on the rise there. Again, it has been since pretty much touching down on the lows at 2016, just down here. It's been holding higher lows since, and it's just another zone where it can hold a high low, which would suggest that it's going to push up. Could take a while to grind up to, was it 31.50, but it looks like that's what's gone. That's what's on the cards. What was that one? Wow. What's next? Pilbara. I don't think it's a daily. I think I like this weekly. The weekly. It's early stages for me on the weekly, but we could probably draw this up. So, okay, leg up, correction, corrective action. Maybe this is the early stages of what we just saw. Was it 2016 to 2017? Big run up, near vertical spike. Okay, a lot of heat's come out of the market. It's grinding out. Then we start holding. This is a high low just here, mid last year, and then it started to lift. So if you're bought on a break, or even if you had to wait, so on the weekly, don't forget, it could have been meaning that you're buying above 50 cents. Whoops. Well, we can't see that, can we? Let me just show you what I'm saying. 50 cents on this entry, but that's a cracking entry. The weekly's in your favor. The daily had a little pullback in your daily. The weekly's probably got a lot more room to move on the upside. It's cleaned out a lot of players. Just don't forget the weekly we just looked at. Spent a lot of time cleaning out through from the highs up at 85, and this little zone just in here above 50. I know you haven't picked the bottom, but what you've picked is a much higher probability trade, and that's, you don't ever want to get the exact high and low, for your buys. You're just trying to take a chunk, and when you assess this, you assess that's your first leg up, that's your corrective price action, and you're looking for your secondary leg up. Now, if you're looking at it going, okay, I think a secondary leg up is pretty much going to find that's your base to start. Okay, you project it up, and if I reckon if you take that from low to high, it takes you up to above 120 anyway. So if you're looking at it 50 cents and you're potentially looking at it thinking I can get to 120 on this, that's 100 and something percent gain. You'd never throw that away, and I wouldn't care about getting in at 50 cents, knowing that it's a much higher probability target. Sorry, higher probability setup, and we've got targets that could be up towards $1.20, and of course, yeah, played out that way. So what we're looking at here, what I would be looking at here, is that potentially this is your price action. So we drill that down. Let's go back to, I want to see if I'm right or if I'm wrong. So that's your leg up. We've corrected one. Oh, I'm gonna have to work it out mathematically. So your high is above 125 down to say 80. What's that? 45 cents. Take that from around $1.10. What's that say? 65. Takes down to 65. So that's right here. So this leg down is about equal the secondary leg down. If that's the case, and it's all within context of this good, strong weekly move up, so that's just corrective action of this leg up. So we're just focused on this leg. This is corrective price action. Actually, we draw that in blue. That's your leg up. That's your corrective price action to where we are. Potentially, we're looking for another equal measured move up from 30 up to say $1.20. That could be 90-cent move up from around 70, which takes you to $1.60. Now, if that's potentially our targets, all we're looking for from, you're dropping it down to your dailies, your daily charts to look for potentially entry, knowing that I'm not saying that is going to be, this is the low. Off the weekly hasn't been confirmed. You need a breakthrough. And if we just head up from here and trade up towards, just go through this level, whatever that is, 93, then yeah, that puts in place that higher low. That's putting in place a bit of positivity, if that's a word. But you've got a higher low in place now, and the market's extended to the downside. So potentially it's a prime zone to start buying. When you go, and then this is why I'm always liking to look for those two corrections lower. It's different to say buying it in here through a break here. Yeah, you could have made some money out of that. It did pop up, but then it's turned around and retraced on you the next, probably 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks, bang straight down, taking out the lows. The fact that we've cleaned out a lot more people on this secondary move down, I'd put more emphasis this high low is going to hold up if that's going to play out. So the daily, just looking at the daily, it hasn't played out. Nothing for me is suggesting just to buy it yet. But if we start to see some higher lows above 72.5, if we pull back and we start to, buyers start stepping in at 77, 80, and they start to support it, yeah, keep your eye on it because of basically what we just built up on that weekly chart. Does that make sense to you guys? Good work on the NST, Laurent, just saw that. Sorry, Maggie, I just saw your comment there. I'm sure that it makes sense. It's just that I don't understand. Oh, look, if what I say doesn't make sense to you and you can make money, who cares? That's my theory. What other people talk about to me, if you talk to another, well, I'm not, obviously not Davin. Davin's taught me, he mentored me, and everything he said makes sense. It just fits well with me. And I'll base my trading around what he's been showing me, what he's taught me over the years, and yeah, it works. So that's great. Now, if he talks to you and it doesn't make sense, it doesn't matter. If you get someone else that you can speak to and can mentor you, and it makes a lot of sense, then you just trade like that, and you just trade with consistency, and away you go. There's 1,000 ways to trade or attack these markets. Just pick one that suits you. Doesn't mean leave the stream though, mate. All right. Now, I keep getting sidetracked. Freak. Thanks, buddy. I am a ledge because everyone's got to send an email to my wife. She's on the computer now. KDR, as I set it on fire. It's probably true. Where was KDR again? Yeah, it's done well. Down half a point. We're hanging in there. CPV, let's look at that. If I'm right, or did we just look at that? Looked at that. And BD1, we haven't looked at. Oh, come away. BD1. It's a daily chart. God, that's just rocketed, hasn't it? It's been a lot of tech stocks and things just gone bananas lately. This is one of them. It's done $1 million worth, so it's kicking off with some good volume. There's a whole lot of little ones that I've been trying to trade, and I couldn't get on as a CFD. It just would not let me, even though it was DMA. I don't know why. I thought it would work, but they just reckon it was too much risk. Probably just getting chicken. Anyway, there was some really good moves, and I think this is one. Look at that spike up. I mean, I would only trade this intraday at the moment because the daily chart's not suggesting anything to me at all. Potentially going from 7.5 down to say 3.5. What's that? 4 cents. Take that from 6.5 down to 2.5. It could still just extend or pop down, but just the way it's reacted today could mean that there's buyers starting to step back in, and we could get another spike. It doesn't have to get back up to the highs. It can get to 5, and look at what would you be making there from 4 to 5? 25%. It's a cracker. Look at it intraday. Well, hard to. That's your 5-minute chart. Oh, look at that. Look at that 5-minute chart potentially through 3.7. So if this is a potential buy for you, I mean, it's getting extended up here. This is just your potential. I like that word, potential. Just trying to assess what's happening here. Maybe this is the base put in play at 3, and we've lifted to pretty much the open today at 3.7. 3 to 3.7 is 0.7. If you take that from 3.4, gets you to 4.1 up here. So this might have, that's your first leg up, second leg to 4.1. May extend that, who knows? May get a bit of a run on. Now it's 1, 2 legs up. So we'll just keep an eye on this one anyway. But it is extended up here. That's probably why it's run out of steam. The volume's dropped off from the open. But it's actually held nicely through 3.4 through here. And you've got a couple of good little green candles. So intraday, yeah, 30-minute chart. Might be starting to find some buying support, but we'll see. Back to our end of day. So yeah, this is what I'd be looking at, these sorts of ones for that volatility. You can see the volatility bang up here. I'll be looking at this for more of a volatility play intraday rather than holding overnight, because you just never know what's going to happen. All right. Look at weekly. Oh yeah, okay. So it's taken out that high, 6.4. Well, in that respect, it's got to do. I think it's going to do some work around 3 to 4 cent mark, and this thing could spike up. If this is what you're talking about, straight up to 10. I know we've spoken about this before, the 10-cent play, when they start to load the boat or below this, and it can get ramped up a bit, pop through 10, and they edge out between 10 and 10 and a half. You can go midpoint when they start trading half-cent marks. EDE, we'll look at that. Oh, we'll finish off on this one actually. Now EDA, to me, it has to hold a high low here if I'm looking to get in. So just off the weekly, it's quite clear it's had a good run down. This is the biggest problem. Where are we? So this is, so it's run up, pullbacks. There's a clear sort of a line there, pop up, back up. You can see that washout. So when it washes out there, this is, look, this could have been a nice little entry through here. You can see that spike up. Yeah, it didn't play out. It didn't get much further, and then we pretty much capitulated from there. It's come all the way back down to 4, which is pretty much, and it's reacted off that support zone. Now, what are we on now? This is a weekly. It doesn't mean that this is a buy zone. Okay, this is your line in the sand. We've got to be proven that, and I want to see a bit more price action done to hold that weekly higher low. And if you can get a weekly higher low, and then basically from here to here, that could take us up towards, you know, 18. It makes sense. 8 to 18, that's, I don't know, it's nearly double. If you can get it somewhere between 8 and 18, or 9. Well, 9, if you get it 9, there you go, 100% gainer. If you get 9, you can get out at 18. But if that's, I'm just guessing that what could play out. It hasn't off the weekly. It's got the potential that this is your support zone, which buyers are willing to protect, and they've reacted it up off that support zone at 4 cents. Could start getting the move on. If it does, it could really start to kick on. I'd be dropping down to my, I want to see this hold up here. So just really just dropping down to your dailies. And again, it's similar, very similar price action. We'll just drill that down. The daily, it's showing some really good signs too. And you just got to be careful. You got to be really wary when they have moves like this. That's your move there, 1, 2. This pullback, and even though we've got a lower high here, don't think that's not the anchor because it hasn't retested there. It's fallen short, so that's a lower high. So for me, my anchor is really at 6.5. Now that anchor, until it's broken, that trend is potentially still up. And we've touched down on 7. It's got hammered, and that could just be along with the rest of the market. Um, Assessing that, I wouldn't just buy it now. I'm just looking for that higher low. If I can pull back 7.5, 8, start to get a bit more buying confirmation, then you can buy it through 8.5. Okay, off you go. Then you'd probably be gunning for those highs at 12, and that could be the start of the move to 18 cents we were just talking about. It's in a good zone. Everything bar the higher low is showing a good sign for me. Nice work, Vin. But just keep an eye on EDE if anyone's interested, and remind me. I don't think I've got that on my watch list, but I might do. All right, guys, I better call it a day there. Thanks very much for joining us. I hope what we just had a bit of a chat about is useful. If it is useful and you enjoy it, that'd be great. It'd be much appreciated if you can leave us a like. I know the video from last Thursday is still looks like it's uploading. There's something wrong with YouTube on that, so we'll see how this video goes. So I think last week's video you can't actually view unless I'm wrong. I don't know how to fix that. I don't know if I can from my end. I think it's a YouTube issue. So we'll see with this one if it holds up and I can save it this time and it uploads properly. Then good. And it'd be great if you can just leave us a like on that. It'd be much appreciated. Like I said, any questions you have, feel free to send us an email to support@tradesetup.com.au. And yeah, I'll get back to you. I'm more than happy to have a chat. All right, guys, thanks for joining me. Have a great couple of days. We'll see what the next couple of days bring us. And if it brings some volatility or a bit of bullishness, but we'll see how we go. And I'll speak to you again on Thursday. Cheers, guys. Bye.